Wabarakatuh.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Welcome everyone to the fourth installment of RSR. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, we're again going to be doing this online. But inshallah, it's not a hassle, and hopefully you guys can be patient with us and work with us. Today, for our fourth lecture, we're going to be talking about a concept called potentiality versus actuality. So yes, we have taken a bit of a break from having a soul per lecture, and inshallah next lecture we will be introducing the divine intellectual soul. But we thought this concept would be quite important to introduce before we moved on to that. But before we even start today's lecture, we will read Dua al-Faraj as we said we would, so that inshallah we may have the blessing of Imam Mahdi's presence. Ajallah ta'ala farajah al-sharif. So let's all read the dua together. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Okay, so today we probably should start off by defining what potentiality and actuality actually are. So let's look first at potentiality. So potentiality is an adjective, and it means having or showing the capacity to develop into something in the future. So it means something has the ability to become something else later on. So an example that's really easy to look at and see is a seed. A seed is the potential form of a tree later on. So the tree is potential inside the seed. It's pretty much a tree in waiting, you know? Just give it some time and it'll become a tree. So that's just giving you a bit of a run through of what potentiality is. It is something having the ability to become something else later on. However, something interesting about potentiality is that when something has the potential to do something else, it has a defined thing it can become later on. For example, what I mean by this is, if let's say this is a seed we got from an orange, so it's an orange seed, when it actualizes its potential and becomes a tree, will it become an apple tree? Can it become even a plum tree? Well, obviously not. It can only become an orange tree. So what's interesting is potentiality is something that has the ability to become something else, but that thing that it can become is something defined, that's sort of inside this potential being. So that's just a concept we want to introduce here. So potentiality has a specific outcome which has been defined in it from the beginning. So yeah, a seed can become a plant later on. Actuality, on the other hand, is literally existing in fact or existing in the current time. So it's when something has become what it is, its potential defined it to be. So in the case of the seed, the example of the seed, yeah, it's when the seed has become this tree. In this instance, it's realized or actualized its potentiality. So the tree here has come out of this potential state and become an actualized state. But the thing is, although the potentiality of something means it has a defined outcome or can only be this thing when it becomes actualized, it can, however, have a different extent or degree to its actualization. And what I mean by that is, depending on things around the seed can grow into a fully grown tree of 2 meters, or even taller maybe, or alternatively it can remain as a really small tree that produces little fruit. So depending on the things that happen to the seed, its degree of actualization can vary. And these things that can happen to the seed are called conditions. So there are many different conditions that a seed has to have for it to become a tree. Or anything that is potential has to have these conditions to actualize itself. For the seed example, things like water, sunlight, the nutrients in the soil, all these things are really important. Without any of these, if it's missing one of these, the seed can't grow into a healthy, strong tree that it's destined to be because of its potentiality. It has the capacity to be this tree, but it can only be this tree with these conditions. It has all of them. So why we even introduced this concept of potentiality and actuality in this lecture is because, our souls can also fit under these categories. We have some souls that are actualized and some that are in potential. What we mean here is we actually have two souls that are actualized, the plantic soul and the animalistic soul, the two that we've already talked about. They're already within us and they're fully functioning. However, we have our other two souls are actually in potential still, haven't been actualized. And they're our divine intellectual soul and divine universal soul. So why the first two are already developed is because we needed them, or we required them to even live in this world, to survive. And we when we talked about the purposes of animals and plants, we saw that. Both the first two souls are what helps drive us and allows us to live in this world and function and interact with this dunya. So that's why we need them sort of pre-installed, already ready. However, the other two souls are sort of things that we have to work to obtain, work to actualize. And only through actualizing them can we, achieve our purpose as human beings. We, in our previous lectures, talked about how human beings had this extra goal that animals and plants didn't have. And this is what it is. It is to actualize these two souls. But to understand the concept of, actualization of our souls and what conditions we as human beings have, because obviously we're not like seeds, we don't have these physical things that we need to be able to actualize ourselves. There must be something else. And so to help us understand this, we're going to bring up an example from a cartoon. Many of you may have seen this cartoon, others may not, but we probably all know about Pokemon. And this Pokemon that we're bringing up today is called Chimchar. It is one of the starter Pokemon in one of the seasons of the show. And so what's interesting about Pokemon is they have the same concept of potentiality and actuality. All Pokemon evolve, that's the whole premise of the show. The Pokemon, they go through struggles and then they evolve. And they actualize the potential they had as smaller versions of themselves. So this Chimchar, specifically, we brought him up because his road to actualization is really similar to the humans. He had to go through many different struggles, overcome challenges and battles. He also had issues controlling his anger and his emotions, and he had to actually go through a lot of struggles with that. Even hurting the people close to him, but then he used to do that, but then having to be able to control these emotions. And only through this control and through these battles and hardships was Chimchar able to evolve into Monferno and then Infernape. So this sort of reflects on how we as human beings have to actualize our potential. We have to go through struggle and hardship to be able to actualize ourselves. Our actions are what actualize ourselves, rather than physical things that we need. We don't need water to actualize ourselves. We need to do specific actions or be able to overcome certain things to be able to ascend. And what's interesting about the Chimchar example is it really links back to our lecture last week, the animalistic soul lecture. Remember how we talked about how we can use our anger for good and how we can use it constructively. All the different forms of anger can be used constructively to motivate us. A similar thing can be seen with this Pokemon. It had issues controlling its anger, but after controlling its anger, it unlocked a new ability, which allowed it to use this energy that it used to vent out as anger as a motivation for itself to spur it on to continue to go through difficult times. And that was a really interesting concept because that's what we can do. We can use our anger in a constructive manner to help motivate us further. So that was just something we want to highlight there. And anger can become an asset to us if we control it and use it constructively. So now that we understand that our actions are what we need to actualize ourselves, they're the conditions or the things, let's look at what Imam Ali says in Nahj al-Balagha. He talks about the same concept that we've been introducing. He says, يجب أن تعلم أيضا أن كل حركة تشبه الغطاء النباتي ولا يمكن للغطاء النباتي أن يعمل بدون ماء بينما المياه مختلفة لذا حيث تكون المياه جيدة يكون النبات جيدا وثماره حلوة في حين أن الماء يكون سيئا سيكون النبات أيضا سيئا وستكون ثماره المرة. So the English translation to this is, you should also know that every action is like a vegetation. What's really beautiful here is Imam Ali compares actions, which we talked about before, to the seeds that we were talking about before. It's really beautiful how Imam Ali makes this parallel. He uses something as simple as a seed to give us this understanding, this knowledge. And that relates back to when we talked about Iqra in our first lecture, how we should be using everything Allah SWT has given us to teach us, to inscribe onto us the paper. And so we can learn from the seed the concept of potentiality and actuality. So Imam Ali keeps going. He says, a vegetation cannot grow without water. And waters are different. So where the water is good, the plant is good and its fruit are sweet. Whereas where the water is bad, the plant is also bad and the fruits are bitter. So what's interesting here is that before we talked about how water was one of the conditions a seed requires to, ascend. Oh, sorry, not ascend, actualize its potentiality. Here, Imam Ali says, yeah, that is true. However, the condition itself can vary. You can have good water and bad water. And that introduces really quite an important concept and a beautiful concept. And it's about how we need to make sure our conditions are in the most beautiful form so that we can actualize in the best way. So before we talked about how our actions are what our conditions are, so similar to a plant which has water, sunlight, and soil as its conditions, we have our own conditions to actualizing ourselves. Our first is our family and the influence they have in our lives. The actions and influence of a family are super important for a child, especially when they start off. When we first are born, the people that raise us are our family, and they instill us with the right morals and the right Islamic understanding, and that's fundamental for our lives further on. So it's always sad when we see people whose families don't have a strong tie with their families, because they've lost that initial condition. They've lost something that they need to actualize themselves, or at least helps them actualize themselves. So that's the first thing. We have to make sure, especially us young adults that are going to have families, inshallah, soon or later on, we have to make sure the environment we create in our homes is one that helps our children, get nurtured and in a proper manner and an Islamically nice manner, so that they grow up loving their religion and grow up being able to actualize their souls. And parents that are listening to this, we should reflect on how we've built our own family dynamic, if our children like talking to us, because that's important, because only through this bond that we have can we teach them the things in Islam. So that's the first condition. The second is obviously society. I know we're living in the Western society, but we cannot, as social beings, Allah SWT has created us as social beings, we cannot function without a link to society and the community. So what we need to be able to do is, through our upbringing in our families, learn to take the good from society, because there is a lot of good out there. Take the good from society, but be able to filter out the bad. We have to be able to have this filtration system, because we need this link to society, or else we cannot develop. We cannot actualize ourselves. But at the same time, we cannot be negatively influenced by society. So that's another thing that we have to pay attention to. And our society can be our community, but also the wider Australian population. We can't block ourselves out. We have to be able to learn how to access the good in society and function with them. And the last is education, both in the academic perspective, but also the Islamic perspective. And this also links back to family quite nicely, because a lot of the time when we send our kids to schools and Arabic schools, we expect, the school to take care of them. And they're their school's responsibility. Their learning is their responsibility. However, that's not the case. We see that children that need that reinforcement at home. And so we have to, in our environments at home, build that atmosphere or environment that allows children to be able to have that assistance in their homework or even in their Islamic work. We have to be able to, teach them Arabic. Not only the Arabic school, they can't do everything by themselves. So what we see here is that education is super important, but it doesn't only come from schools, but from the home and society as well. And so these three are sort of important factors, like the water and the sunlight and the soil. But there is one overarching condition that is the most important, and we did mention in the first lecture. It's our intention. if you remember in our first lecture, we talked about how there's something called practical worship or general worship, that's what we called it, and al-ibad al-amaliyya. And it's how everything in our lives, from the small to the large, can become worship if our intention is to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or we have a good intention. So this concept is really beautiful because we talked about how our actions are what help us actualize our potential and actualize our divine intellectual soul, or our human soul, and our divine universal soul. So if we do have our intention in every action towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can make everything we do in our lives help our development and go towards actualizing ourselves. If we have good intentions, they'll help actualize ourselves, but if we have bad intentions, the opposite can occur, whereby we can help our wild desires go out of control, give our ego a lot of focus, and let the shaitan enter through our animalistic soul and control our lives. We have to be careful how our intention sways us. Does it help give too much focus on the animalistic soul, or does it allow us to work on our divine intellectual soul and divine universal soul? So that was just a concept we wanted to introduce. In Surah Al-Araf, ayah 58, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does mention this concept as well. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والبلد الطيب يخرج نباته بإذن ربه والذي خبث لا يخرج إلا نكدا كذلك نصرف الآيات لقوم يشكرون. And the good land, its vegetation emerges by the permission of its Lord, but that which is bad, nothing emerges except sparsely, with difficulty. Thus do we diversify the signs for a people who are grateful. This ayah does show the exact same concept we talked about before, and what Imam Ali said, how we need a good conditions, a good land, a good foundation to be able to get good results. But this ayah introduces another concept that we didn't talk about before. It says, even if there is a good land, its vegetation can be good only by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only through the permission of its Lord. So here it introduces a new concept that we need. Remember we talked about in our first lecture, we are alaq beings, dependent beings on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need Him through everything, even in developing ourselves and actualizing ourselves. So we need His permission to do anything, including this. And therefore, a lot of the time, I feel like we especially Iraqis, we spam the word inshallah so much. We always go inshallah this, inshallah that. But in reality, we should be spamming inshallah. Like, it should be something that we say all the time, because in reality, we can't do anything with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He can take away our lives just like that, instantaneously. So we should be saying, remember to have this dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Remember Him in everything we do. Because without Him, we wouldn't be able to do any of the things we do. So let's just have that in the backs of our minds. We need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only through Him and through a good foundation, good conditions, can we reach our purpose in this dunya. And it is to actualize our souls, that are potential. So now, I want to introduce another concept that we should probably delve into. And it's related to our purpose in this world. We said that the divine intellectual soul is sometimes called the human soul. But we also can use the logic we talked about in our previous two lectures. The plantic soul is given to plants exclusively, and then to animals and humans. The animalistic soul was given to exclusively animals and humans. What about the human soul? Well, obviously it's given exclusively to humans. But we said it's potential. So the question is, are we actually human? Well, if we're looking at humanity as a scientific perspective, Homo sapiens, yeah, we are human. If we're talking about a human as being someone who is Homo sapien, yeah, we are. Scientifically, that makes sense. But in Islam, we do talk about a different concept, because we did say that a human has both the shahwa and the aql, and we have this other understanding of a human being. And the concept that we want to introduce here is something called al-insan al-kamil, or the full human. And it is the thing that we want to strive to become once we actualize ourselves. If you remember when we talked about the chain of ascension in our second lecture, we said that on top of humans, there was a level beyond, and it was this insan al-kamil. And so we can reach this level if we actualize our human soul and our divine intellectual soul, inshallah. One of our scholars defines this insan al-kamil as follows. الإنسان الكامل هو الإنسان الذي وصل إلى أرقى درجات الإنسانية ذلك الحد الذي لا يكون فوقه إنسان. The complete human is the human which has reached the pinnacle of the levels of a human being, that level which there is no level of humanity beyond. So, okay, we've now seen that to be a true human being in an Islamic concept, we have to reach this level. So what are we now? To understand this, we're going to look at some Arabic terminology. The difference between the word kamil, or full, and tam, complete. So these are the English direct translations that actually give the full meaning of the Arabic. And so we'll do a bit of exploration to understand the full meaning and the difference between these two words. Unfortunately, in Arabic, the antonym to both these words is the exact same thing. It's naqas, which can translate to many things in English. Incomplete, imperfect, defective, deficient, etc., etc. So obviously, to understand, the best way to understand anything is to look at the Quran. And the Quran does give us the answer to this in Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah 3. When this ayah is actually quite special to us Shia. It's an ayah that came down to the Prophet in Ghadir. And it's when Allah SWT is telling him about how he has to complete his religion by telling everyone about the wilayah of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So in this ayah, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want to focus on this bit. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي. So here, Allah SWT has used both the words, akmalt and atmamt, kamil and tam. But if they do mean the same thing as we sort of insinuated before, then Allah SWT could have said, akmaltu lakum dinakum wa alaykum ni'mati. He didn't have to use the different words. And so here, it can show that they are actually quite different. The English translation is really nice to us and already sort of gives the difference in the translation. It uses the words perfected and completed. Kamil is perfected, and tam as completed. And that really is the essence of the difference. One is the full completion to utmost level it can be, the utmost actualization of the potential, and the other one's just, actualizing or having the capacity to. And to understand this even further, let's give an example of a masjid. Really simple example. A masjid is defined by, its structure, its dome, its facilities having a prayer area. Obviously, if the dome is just missing or the roof is gone completely, it doesn't have to be the dome. If it's the roof, there's no roof on this masjid. We can't say this masjid is complete. We'd say that masjid is naqas. It's not tam. If we return this, then we can, the masjid is tam. However, if the masjid had all these shelves in it for Qur'ans, and had, let's say, 10 Qur'ans, but had the capacity to hold 600 Qur'ans, we can't say it's a perfect masjid until the shelves are full, it's reached its full capacity. And that only if it reaches these 600, if it has these 600 Qur'an, then we can say, it is a kamil masjid. It's a perfected masjid. And so that's the difference that's the answer to the question, are we human? We are tam human beings. We're not common human beings yet. We need to work on that. So we are complete human beings because we have this potential to become the insan kamil. We have the capacity. So that's why we're tam. However, to be fully complete or perfected, we need this. We need to actualize ourselves. And so, just to bring it back to the masjid example, when we talked about how we're complete, we're tam human beings, it's because we have the scaffold. Just like the masjid scaffold was completed, but it didn't have everything filled out to its best capacity. And so that's what we want to work on. But obviously, when we have a goal to reach, we obviously need an example to be able to see how someone can even reach that level. And we should pose the question, has anyone ever reached this level of perfect human? And there is. The best human being obviously has reached this level. The Prophet, peace be upon him, Allahumma salli ala. And not just him, but the Imams and the Imams and the Anbiya, the Prophets and the Imams. They've all reached this level of the perfect human. They're insan kamil. But a lot of you may go, but they're ma'sumin, How can we, us, the people that are down here, reach their level? Well, there are many people that we've seen who aren't, let's say, ma'sumin, or let's say aren't prophets or imams, but have reached this level. Nisa al-Alamin, for example, the 5 women of the world, they've all reached this level. Same thing with Luqman. In fact, he was quoted in the Quran, but he wasn't a prophet. Al-Khidr, many more people, Zainab, Al-Abbas alayhi salam, all these people, they're not imams or prophets, but they reach this level through their actions too. So we can see that we can have this capacity. We do have this capacity to reach. And so all we have to do now is strive to reach this place. But to look at how we can even actualize our souls, why not look at the souls that have already actualized within us, the plantic and animalistic soul? Because obviously, they must have had a point where they were potential, right? For them to actualize. So our plantic soul, which is involved with our growth from a baby to who we are now, we talked about in our first lecture how our plantic soul comes to us through only after conception, after our first cell is formed. So before that, it was just potential. When it wasn't one cell, it was potential. When our DNA was apart, we were potential. Once it came together, we were actualized, and that's why we started growing and stuff like that. Same thing with the animalistic soul. We talked about how only after 4 months the baby gets the soul and is able to sense things around them. The baby, obviously, the conditions for this soul to actualize, the human body had to have the capacity to sense. We needed our brain, our nervous system to be somewhat functional. We had to have our organs, like the eyes and stuff like that. So that's really, those were the physical conditions that were required for these souls to actualize. But what about our growth in general from this child to an adult form? Well, yeah, an embryo in the womb has conditions that it requires for it to develop and actualize into the people we are today, being born. So what are these conditions that the embryo goes through? Well, it needs nutrients. Like we said, the plant needs nutrients through the soil. We needed nutrients through the umbilical cord from our mother. We needed the warmth and the heat of our mother. We also needed a stable environment that we had to develop in. So we need these conditions to be able to grow in this environment. Remember we said last lecture, we grow really attached to this environment. So the question here is, if we are developing correctly with these things, why is it that a baby cries when it is born? Why is it in so much pain when it's born? And the answer to that is, it's because it's lost this comfort that it had when it was in the womb. It was comfy, it was living a good life. Food was coming into it, by itself. It was warm. Now it's out in the real world. It's gonna have to take some effort to eat. It's gonna, it's colder outside. It was familiar with its internal environment, familiar with the heartbeat. But now that familiarity is gone. It's not directly close to the mother's heart anymore. It's fearing the unknown. It's now in a new environment, and it can't comprehend, it's really scary to be in something that you don't understand. And it can't comprehend everything with its kind of understanding. We know that a child can't open its eyes in the first hours of its life. It doesn't have the capacity to be able to understand all the stimulus that it's being bombarded with. And so that's why it cries. What we want to get at here is, have we ever seen this before? Another example, can we draw parallels between a baby's reaction and something else in our lives? And yeah, we can. A baby's reaction from going from the womb to being born into this dunya, or to the outside world, is similar to any transition that we make to an unknown environment, just like death. Why are we afraid of death? Why are we always concerned about death? Because we're going to lose the comfort that we have in this dunya. We had a lot of comfort, we have a lot of luxury, things we like. We're familiar with everything here. We know how the system works, we know how the economy works, how people work. We don't know anything about the hereafter. We're afraid of what we don't know. We don't know about what the worlds are, the after death, what happens after death, the things like barzakh, the hereafter, the day of judgment. We don't know even how that works yet, only from what we know from the Quran. We can't comprehend the hereafter with our current understanding. In the Quran, Allah SWT tries helping us draw parallels to the hereafter. But we know we don't take our bodies in the hereafter. So what does it mean by in the hereafter there will be rivers and honey, rivers of honey? If we don't have our physical body, how do we taste? Here Allah SWT is trying to draw parallels for us to understand with our current understanding that's linked to this dunya. But obviously, there are things we can't understand yet. Only by going there can we understand them. It's sort of like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like trying to, it's like a scientist trying to explain quantum physics to a preppy. It's really difficult, so you try drawing parallels and examples, but obviously we don't have this full understanding of what's out there, and that's why we're afraid of death. But that's not right. We really shouldn't be afraid of death. Fear of death is just another illusion that the shaitan creates to get us really focused on this dunya and our desires and stuff, trying not to think of something we're afraid of later on. You know? He tries scaring us with death. He makes us think of death as a dead end, Atheists believe this. Once you die, that's it. You become dust and, you're gone. We don't believe that, obviously. That's a wrong understanding. Death is actually a door to the hereafter, a door to a new world. And we should really see death like this, because we're really being employed here. Life insurance policies, our entire economy is driven on our fear of death, trying to plan for the future, things we can't plan for. I'm not saying planning is a bad thing. Planning is a good thing. But if it's a hindrance to us, then yeah, it is a bad thing. If it takes up all our time, doesn't let us see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and remember Him, yeah, then it's a bad thing. So let's try not falling so easily to all these ploys and realize that death isn't a bad thing, something we shouldn't be afraid of. Well, let's look at what the Imams say about death. It's a really nice story by Ali ibn Muhammad alayhi salam. And it goes like this. I probably should just read the English for you guys. The Arabic's here. We'll send the PowerPoints hopefully as well with the lectures in the descriptions section. So on a Google Drive. So inshallah, if you want to read the exact hadith, you can. But the English goes as follows. So the Imam is narrated that he said to one of his companions, who was sick and was in a state of crying and grieving and complaining due to the fear of death. The Imam ﷺ says, O servant of Allah, you fear death because you do not comprehend it. Then the Imam ﷺ presented an example and said, if you had become dirty, and due to the excess of dirt and dirtiness you were suffering an inconvenience, and you knew that the cure for all of this lay in you taking a shower, would you wish to go to a bath and clean yourself, or would you wish to remain in the same state of dirtiness as a result, and continue to undergo the suffering that you're in? The sick man said, yes, like hell yeah, I would wish to take the shower. So the Imam ﷺ responds, death for you is the very same shower. So what the Imam's saying is, death is like a shower. It's respite and not pain for a believer. He said for you specifically in the hadith. He's saying to a companion or someone who's reached that level, death is really nice. It's actually refreshing. So the Imams are trying to say here that if we are actualized, if we are have reached our capacity, then yeah, death should be something we should be afraid of. Something we should even welcome with open arms. To understand why it is that believers are okay with death and not everyone else, we should really understand the nature of death. Death is literally our severing, the severing of our attachments to this world, to this dunya, to the material world, so that we can go on our journey to the hereafter, so we can, fly up there. We can't do that if we're still attached and stuck to this world. So depending on how strong our attachment is to this dunya, to the material world, will depend on how hard it is for us to die, or how painful death really is. Because imagine, the harder we have to work to, cut those attachments with an axe, the harder we have to sever our attachments, the more painful it's going to be. And that's why we're afraid of death. A lot of us are afraid of death because we're afraid of having to separate from this dunya that we have become so familiar with. But what we have to do is get past ourselves, get past of this idea that we only exist in this world. Look and realize that this world's just, the testing ground, and that we have to put it aside and see that there is a hereafter and we should be working for that instead. And it's easier said than done, but we should all try working for this, because if we do reach a level where we have such little attachment with this world, it'll be like, taking a hair out of water. So easy. Not like a hair from dough where it's a bit more struggle, or a hair in concrete, which is impossible even. We have to be aware of this and work to strive to decrease our attachment to the dunya. So that's what death really is, and that's why death shouldn't be something we should be afraid of. Because if we go back to the example of the child, when it was in the womb, thought, it had everything. It thought that it was living the life. And saw that being born was a dead end. That's why it cried. It was like, no, my comfort's over. But we should, now that we're born and we've lived in this world, we can really tell the baby has no clue what's going on. Because in the womb is literally a torture chamber. It's a place that's completely dark, there's no light there. All you get is feeding, there's no Netflix, So if we could tell the baby, baby, hey, you're actually going through a door now to a better place. This world is so beautiful. There are so many beautiful places out here. There are so many things we can benefit from being in this dunya. We can work towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can see the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can relish in the stories of our Imma, read the Quran. There are things that the baby couldn't do in the womb. So if only people that were dead already in the hereafter could talk to us and tell us, hey, we also are quite limited like the child. We think we're living the life, but we're not. We have to go through this door of death, which the Plantic helps us, reach by, ending our time. Because we don't know anything, really. We don't know what's out there. And what we are missing out on is this direct love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we can reach by dying. Being able to, submit our exam papers and, getting the results of our exam. All the time, the exam is the stressful part and the hard part. Getting our results is also stressful, right? But when we get our good results, how good of a feeling is it? We want this feeling at the moment. And only through death can we get this feeling. This feeling of the true love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the true understanding of what we're missing out on. So we need to die, pretty much, is what we're trying to say. Death is an inevitable part of our journey, and it is something we should be looking forward to, not dreading. So now that we've understood what death is, and we've talked about how death is something that naturally occurs, and we have to, reach, and we should, inshallah, reach it after actualizing our potential. What happens if potentiality is killed before it's actualized? To give this example, I'm going to bring up the seed again, because the seed is the best example to talk about potentiality and actuality. If I had a seed and burnt it, so I put it under a match and burnt the seed, what is it like on burning? If you remember at the beginning of the lecture, we said a seed is pretty much like a tree in waiting. So it's pretty much like burning a tree. So what if I had a bag of seeds? What then? If I burnt this bag of seeds, it'd be literally like burning a forest fire. And in Australia, we can see how devastating they are. This summer, we've seen how devastating forest fires are. So that's the real impact of killing potentiality. We'd never see it, but it's the real deal. And obviously, this is different, by the way, to just eating like a plant. Like you may say, oh no, but we're killing its potential. But no, that's not true, because we're actually letting a plant actualize its potential by being consumed by us. Remember when we talked about the chain of ascension? Their purpose, what they want to actualize, is them ascending in this chain. So eating them, or using them in a useful manner, is allowing them to actualize their potential, not killing their potential. So there's a difference between allowing something to actualize potential by, killing it, right, theoretically, or killing the potential before it's allowed to actualize. And that's why we said, wasting food or being vegan is sort of mean to the plants, because you're not allowing them to actualize their potential. And that's the problem. So this is about plants. What about human beings? How bad is it to kill our potential? Really bad. Because it's killing something's potential to be a perfect human being. Something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be. He set up this test, this dunya, solely for us to be able to develop into this perfect human being. For his creation, his best creation, to reach that level. So that's why in Islam, anything that rips away this potential, kills this potential, is haram. And that's why in Islam we don't agree with concepts such as abortion, suicide, murder, and euthanasia. And a lot of people argue, especially with euthanasia, they argue, the person's about to die soon anyway. Why can't we take them out of their misery? But we don't know how much can happen in that little period of time that the person has left. A lot of the people change in suffering or in pain. They see their Lord for the first time. And that could be just some little thing that eases their adab in hereafter. Or if they were atheists, for example. Or it may be they might do a good action that may get them over the line, or they may have this epiphany that gets them over the line, makes them go to Jannah instead of Nar, make them go to heaven instead of hell. We don't know anything. Everything's in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands. A person could recover miraculously, miracles happen. So we can never, ever remove potentiality by our own hands. We should leave the determination of when we are to die to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. Because as we said before, we are dependent on Him. He's the one that decides these things. And He's even given us a timer inside of us that decides too. So that's what we're trying to get to the concept of. That the killing of potentiality is a very bad thing. And why is it's really bad to kill the potential of a human being specifically can be seen in the Quran. In Surah 17, Ayah 70, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَلَقَدْ خَلَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَّلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبُرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَرَزَقْناهُم مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَفَضَّلْنَاهُم عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. And we have certainly honored the children of Adam and carried them on the land and sea and provided for them the good things and preferred them over much of what we have created with definite preference. So here, what the ayah shows, it proves that we are so dear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's given us this gift of our potential to becoming this perfect human being, becoming His best of creations. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really loves the human being, and that's why it's really bad. It's an extreme sin to kill this potentiality and not let a human being reach their potential. So now, I know I'm a bit over time, but we are wrapping up the end. We're getting to the end of the lecture. We're about to wrap up. We can see in that potential is really a sacred thing. And so depending on where we are, the rules around potential are quite different. For example, in Hajj, we're told we can't kill mosquitoes or birds or anything like that. We can't kill animals. Yet, in our daily lives, we're allowed to do that, right? The reason here is because in Hajj, we're meant to be devoting ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only, to be His, His true abd, His true slave. So these things, it's not in our intention, it's not in our intention to think of other creatures, and that's why it's haram to kill these things, and it makes our Hajj invalid, because it's a diversion from our initial cause. A more understandable example is hunting for fun. It's extremely makruh in Islam. Why? Because you're killing something without letting it actualize its potential, killing the animal without consuming it, or something like that. That's why hunting for sport isn't allowed in Islam. It's makruh. So that's just a concept we want to introduce. So next time, we know flies are annoying. We mentioned it last lecture. Flies are really annoying. But so when a fly enters your house, before you chuck out the mortine, or you bring out the fly swatters, I don't know who uses them anymore. Try thinking that, hey, this fly probably has potential. I know its life cycle is only a couple of days, but it may not have fully completed its potential yet. So what we should do is trap the fly. Try trapping it. We usually do this with normal glass, and then put a paper underneath it and take it outside. Let it fulfill its potential and actualize itself. That's just something to think about next time you see any bug. Try taking it outside. Same with spiders. Take it outside. Don't kill it, because it may have a purpose that you don't know of and may have not completed it yet. So the take-home message for today is similar to how the baby in the womb, its womb was that environment that it required to develop its potentiality to become a fully grown human. Our dunya is this environment that we have to actualize our potential and to actualize ourselves to become the insan kamil, the perfect human being. And we said our conditions to actualize ourselves were things like the community, society, the family, education, things that we have in this dunya. And so what we should do is follow what the Prophet, peace be upon him, said. He said, "Mutu qabla an tamutu," die before you die. And what he means by this is not obviously die, but if you remember what we talked about death was to sever our attachments to this world. So he's saying, let's try severing our attachment to this world so that death is nice. And that we are ready when we die and we go to the Day of Judgment, when we go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have actualized our potentiality and we are ready. And so we can go to heaven and we can get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's what the Prophet's saying. Let's die before we die and make sure that we are ready before death comes. So let's not leave everything too late. Let's see that door, reach that door, before our time runs out. and it is too late, and we won't have another opportunity to actualize ourselves. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. So now we were initially doing the video segment as together, boys and girls. Unfortunately, because of this online format, because of the coronavirus, we will be doing it separate as well. So let's move on to the video segment. I'll just turn on the speakers because my laptop won't connect sound to the TV. The clip for today is Kung Fu Panda. I don't think I have to give too much context about Kung Fu Panda because you've probably all seen it. But if you haven't, the people we're going to be talking about, we're looking at today, is this turtle called Oogway, and he's like this master of Kung Fu and stuff. He's really wise, and the thing with Oogway is he chose someone called the Dragon Warrior. He chose a random person to be this Dragon Warrior. And the other master who we're going to see here is called Master Shifu. He's the red panda. And he doesn't understand why Master Oogway chose this person, this panda, by the way. Why he chose this panda to be the successor to all of Kung Fu. That's what the Dragon Warrior is. He's someone that is destined to be the best master of Kung Fu ever. So the red panda, Shifu, doesn't understand why Oogway has chosen this person. He thinks it's an accident. But Oogway is going to try getting him to understand why he chose the panda, and so try seeing the concepts of potentiality and actuality in this clip, inshallah. So hopefully it works. Nope, didn't work. Oh yeah, there we go. Nope, that didn't work as well. Bear with me, guys. I could just get it on the internet. And also what? Why is it working?
Master, I have, it's very bad news. Shifu, there is just news. There is no good or bad. Master, your vision was right. Tai Lung has broken out of prison. He's on his way. That is bad news. If you do not believe that the Dragon Warrior can stop him. The panda? Master, that panda is not the Dragon Warrior. He wasn't even meant to be here. It was an accident. There are no accidents. Yes, I know. You've said that already. Twice. Well, that was no accident either. Thrice. My old friend, the panda will never fulfill his destiny, nor you yours, until you let go of the illusion of control. Illusion? Yes. Look at this tree, Shifu. I cannot make it blossom when it suits me, nor make it bear fruit before its time. But there are things we can't control. I can control when the fruit will fall. And I can control where to plant the seed. That is no illusion, Master. Ah, yes. But no matter what you do, that seed will grow to be a peach tree. You may wish for an apple or an orange, but you will get a peach. But a peach cannot defeat Tai Lung. Maybe it can, if you are willing to guide it, to nurture it, to believe in it. But how? How? I need your help, Master. No, you just need to believe. Promise me, Shifu. Promise me you will believe. I will try. Good. My time has come. You must continue your journey without me. What are you... Master! You can't leave me. Master!
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. Jeez, my YouTube's gonna be alright. So I'll ask you guys to, because you're watching this online, pause the video. I have a bit of time to think about the concepts that you think relate. And I assume you've paused now, and so we'll go through the answers. So there is a lot of stuff packed in this clip. The first concept was something that Oogway told Shifu. He told him that you have to get rid of this illusion of control. Because Shifu assumed, oh, we can control all the things in our lives. And it's similar to how we talk about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if we have good conditions, he was like, we can determine this and that and make sure the conditions are good. But without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission, nothing can happen. And so we have this illusion of control that we are the people that cause everything to happen. But that's not true. And that's what Oogway was telling Shifu. He was telling him, this illusion of control, get rid of it. We don't have this control that you aspire to have. And so, that's just something to know in our daily lives. Another thing was this whole concept of, you may wish for an apple or an orange, but you'll get a peach from this peach seed. It's talking about how potentiality has a defined root. And a peach seed can never be something else. It has to be a peach tree. However, we talked about in our lecture how the size of the peach tree or the number of peaches that it produces are all dependent on the conditions and how well the conditions we give it are. That didn't come out right. Another concept that was in this lecture was the idea of believing in this dragon warrior, or the panda. Uwe kept telling Shiva to believe. He was telling him how, if we replace the word destiny from this clip to potentiality, it really just makes sense. It really makes a lot of sense. But he tells him that, he tells him that the peach cannot defeat Tai Lung. And then Oogway tells him, no, maybe it can. If you're willing to guide it, nurture it, believe in it. So it's like us as us in society, how we have to, nurture the young people, the younger generation, help create that environment that can help sustain them so that they can actualize their potentiality. So that's something that was introduced there. And the final concept was the death. You saw how peaceful and nice and calming the death of Oogway was. And that's because he was so, detached from the world. In fact, Shifu would sort of look at him like, what's he on about? There are no accidents and all that stuff. That shows how much he was surrendered to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he knew that everything was in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands. And so that's why, for him, death was so nice and easy. So those were the concepts that were in this lecture. And it showed how Shifu couldn't understand something about that Oogway had understood, and it was how nothing's in our control, how potentiality is defined, and how we have to help build the conditions for something to be actualized later on, for something potential to be actualized. So this is the end of today's lecture and the video clip. Inshallah, in the link of this video, I will have the quiz link, and I'll have the link to this video as well, so the YouTube link. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll track down my email in the link section as well, in the comment section as well, if you guys want it. And if you have Messenger, by the way, please tell me, the boys, because we have an RSR 2020 Messenger group, so I can add you in. So inshallah, you guys can do the quiz and it'll go from there. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli.